My name's Elena Parker. I'm 26 and I live just outside Denver, Colorado. By day, I'm a waitress at a mid-range Italian restaurant downtown. Not glamorous, not fancy, but honest work. And if I'm being real with you, I've always been too trusting, always craving my mother's approval, even when she never gave me much to hold on to. That flaw almost destroyed me the night she mocked me in front of everyone, called me Waitress Girl like it was an insult. And the entire table laughed, but she didn't know. None of them knew. Hours later, I'd be standing in a courtroom, staring at a judge who rose to his feet and addressed me. He didn't call me Waitress Girl. He called me Boss. If you're watching, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Have your parents ever made you feel small, like you were nothing? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to know if you've ever proven them wrong. Now. To understand why that night shattered me, and why it also lit the fire that changed everything, you need to know what came before it. My family's story wasn't picture perfect, no matter how hard I tried to pretend it was. The September air in Denver is strange, warm by day, but at night, a chill creeps into your bones. I felt that chill as I drove toward my mother's house for dinner, my work uniform still hanging on my frame. I had thought about changing, but there wasn't time. My shift had run late, like it always did, and Mom hated it when I was late. Her house glowed at the end of a quiet suburban street, all golden light spilling from the windows, the smell of roasted chicken wafting out before I even reached the porch. It looked cozy, safe, and homey. But for me, home had always been complicated. When I stepped inside, the sound of laughter hit me first. My sister Jenna was already at the table, her nails painted glossy red, her hair curled like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover. She worked at a tech startup, marketing executive, as she was fond of bragging, and she knew exactly how to play the role of the golden child. Mom adored her. Dad never said much, but he smiled at Jenna more than he ever smiled at me. "Look who finally made it," Mom's voice cut across the room as I set my purse down. Sharp, dismissive. "I came straight from work," I said softly, brushing hair from my face. Jenna smirked, swirling her wine glass. "Still wearing your apron?" "Cute!" The table chuckled. My chest tightened. I slid into my seat, staring at the roasted chicken glistening on the table, the buttery rolls piled high, the steam curling up like a cruel joke. This was supposed to be dinner, family, tradition, comfort. But sitting there, I already felt like an intruder in my own life. Dinner passed in a blur. Mom bragged about Jenna's recent promotion. Dad asked her about her new car. When I mentioned that I'd been offered a lead server position at the restaurant, a step up, more responsibility, a pay raise, Mom snorted into her wine. "Lead waitress," she said, her lips curling. "Is that what we're celebrating now? Carrying trays a little higher?" The table burst into laughter. Jenna leaned across, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Oh, Mom, don't be mean. Some people just aren't meant for real careers." I wanted to disappear, to melt into the chair and vanish. But instead, I forced myself to swallow the bitterness, my fork trembling as I pushed food around my plate. Then Mom did it. The words that shattered something deep inside me. She raised her glass, her eyes glinting. "To my Jenna," she announced proudly. "The daughter who makes us proud, and to—" She gestured toward me with her glass. "Our little waitress girl. May she keep bringing the breadsticks." The table roared with laughter, my throat closed. Heat burned in my cheeks. Even Dad chuckled into his napkin. Jenna smirked, eyes sparkling with triumph. I whispered, barely audible, "Mom, why would you say that?" But she heard me and she smirked. "Because it's true." The sound of clinking glasses, laughter, and my mother's smug expression pressed down on me like a weight I couldn't carry. My vision blurred. My heart thundered. And in that moment, I realized something painful. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how many shifts I pulled, no matter how much I tried to make them proud, in her eyes, I'd always be nothing more than Waitress Girl. But what none of them knew was that life has a way of turning tables. And the next time we stood in a room together, it wouldn't be Mom raising a glass. It would be the judge, standing for me. That night wasn't just humiliation, it was ignition. And while I sat there choking back tears, somewhere deep inside, a spark began to burn. A spark that would grow into something far more powerful than their laughter. Growing up, I used to believe families were supposed to be safe places. That no matter what the world threw at you, home was where you could collapse without judgment. But in my house, home was just another stage. And my sister Jenna was always the star. We were only 2 years apart, but the gap between us felt like a canyon. From the moment she could talk, she sparkled. Teachers adored her. Neighbors called her a natural. Dad would beam when she entered a room, as if her very presence elevated us all. And Mom built her entire identity around Jenna's success. Every trophy, every ribbon, every half-baked accomplishment of hers was framed, praised, paraded. Me? I was the quiet one, the responsible one. I did my homework, helped with chores, and babysat the younger cousins at family gatherings. No one noticed that I brought home straight A's, or that my teachers said I had a gift for writing. Because compared to Jenna's glow, I was just background. There were small traditions that should have bound us together, but only highlighted the difference. On birthdays, the birthday girl got to choose dinner. When Jenna turned 16, Mom rented out a banquet hall downtown. She arrived in a limo, her friends cheering, Dad giving a speech about his future CEO daughter. When I turned 16, Mom made spaghetti in our kitchen. No decorations, no speech. Just a candle stuck into a grocery store cupcake. I told myself it didn't matter. That maybe my gift wasn't in spotlight moments, but in endurance. In being steady, but the message was clear. Jenna was exceptional. I was expected. The school made it worse. When Jenna landed the lead in a school play, Mom sent out flyers to the whole family. When I won an essay contest, Mom said, "That's nice, Elena, but don't brag." At family dinners, Dad would say, "Jenna's destined for greatness." Then he'd turn to me and add, "And Elena will always be there to support her." Support her. Not to stand beside her. Not to rise on my own. Support. Like I was a crutch, not a daughter. I tried to shrug it off. I buried myself in part-time jobs, summer shifts, waitressing, bussing tables, anything that gave me a little independence. By 18, I was paying for my own phone bill, my own clothes, and even chipping in for gas. Jenna? She never worked a day in her life until after college. But somehow, I was the one branded as just the waitress girl. The irony? I loved my job. There's something sacred about restaurants. The rhythm of clattering plates, the low hum of conversation, the smell of garlic and butter wrapping around you like a blanket. Serving people, watching them laugh over meals, celebrating birthdays, proposals, anniversaries. It felt alive, like I was part of people's memories. But to my mother, it was humiliation. She once told me, sharp and cold. "You'll never catch a man smelling like fried food. Elena, get a real career." I wanted to scream that waitressing was a career, that it kept the lights on, that it built grit, that it taught me more about humanity than Jenna's marketing job ever could. But I stayed quiet. I swallowed it, because arguing only made her cruelty sharper. Still, I clung to the small things that gave me peace. Every Sunday, I went hiking in the Rockies, just me in the mountains. I'd sketch wildflowers, breathe the crisp air, and remind myself I was more than their version of me. At the restaurant, regulars asked for my section by name. The chefs trusted me to keep the floor running smoothly. My manager whispered once, "You've got leadership in you, Elena. Don't let anyone tell you different." Those moments were like lifelines. But the cracks at home were widening. One Christmas, the whole family gathered around the fireplace. Wrapping paper littered the floor, laughter bouncing off the walls. Jenna tore into her final gift, a diamond tennis bracelet. She squealed, throwing her arms around Mom. I unwrapped mine, a cookbook. From the clearance section, Jenna smirked at me over her glass of champagne. "Perfect for our little waitress girl." The room chuckled. Dad sipped his whiskey, not meeting my eyes. And Mom? She didn't even flinch. She let the words hang there like truth. That night, lying awake in my childhood bedroom, I realized something. They weren't just ignoring me. They were actively diminishing me. And the more I worked to earn their pride, the more they shoved me into the shadows. Looking back now, I can see how the tension built. The favoritism, the mockery, the dismissals, they weren't isolated moments. They were bricks, stacked one on top of the other, building a wall between me and the family I had desperately tried to belong to. By the time that dinner rolled around, the one where Mom raised her glass and mocked me as Waitress Girl, I should have expected it. But betrayal doesn't work like that. It doesn't get easier. It cuts deeper every time. And that night's cruelty wasn't just another brick. It was the match. The one that lit the fire under everything I thought I knew about family. Because the truth was, while I thought I was just a waitress scraping by, I was already standing on a secret far bigger than Jenna's promotions or Mom's insults. And when that secret came to light, it would burn down the golden pedestal they had built for her. It started with small digs wrapped in laughter. One night, Jenna and I were at Mom's kitchen table scrolling through our phones. She tossed hers down with a grin. Guess who got invited to speak at the Women in Business luncheon? Me. They said I'm inspirational. I smiled politely, though my chest pinched. That's great, Jenna. She leaned back in her chair, smirking. What about you? Serving tables at Tony's? Think they'll ask you to give a speech on how to balance 3 plates without dropping them? Mom, standing at the counter stirring her sauce, chuckled. Don't be mean, Jenna, though. You do have a point. I laughed with them. Can you believe that? I laughed like it didn't sting. But inside, something was splintering. Another time, Dad called me out of the blue. His voice was sharp, clipped. Elena, can you come help with the fundraiser this Saturday? Jenna's hosting and we'll need all hands on deck. I swallowed. Sure. What would you like me to do? Pause. His answer was immediate. Serve drinks. Keep the appetizers moving. You're good at that. I froze. Dad, I could help with planning or managing the guest list or... No, he cut me off. Leave the important things to Jenna. Just do what you're good at. The line went dead before I could protest. That Saturday, I walked into the fundraiser in my black dress and flats, balancing trays while Jenna floated around in a sequined gown, shaking hands, collecting praise. Guests assumed I was hired help. Not once did my father correct them. Not once did my mother acknowledge me. By the end of the night, my cheeks hurt from fake smiles. But my chest? My chest ached like a bruise that wouldn't fade. The comments kept piling up, sharper each time. At Thanksgiving, as we sat around the long oak table, Jenna raised her glass. Here's to being promoted to senior marketing manager. Everyone clapped, Dad beamed, Mom dabbed her eyes. I cleared my throat. I just paid off my student loans this month. Completely debt-free, silence. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then Jenna giggled, tilting her head. Well, congratulations, Elena. You're officially... Average, the table erupted in laughter. Mom added softly. Don't take it personally, dear. She's only teasing, but it wasn't teasing. It was erasure. Even holidays became battlegrounds. One Christmas morning, Jenna unwrapped a designer handbag, leather so smooth it gleamed in the firelight. She squealed, hugging Dad. I opened my box. Inside was an apron. Pink, frilly, with "World's Best Waitress" printed across the front. The room burst into laughter. Jenna leaned across the pile of wrapping paper, smirking. Perfect for you, Elena. I stared at the apron, my throat burning, my eyes stinging. Dad clapped me on the back. Come on, kiddo. Don't look so serious. Learn to laugh at yourself. But I wasn't laughing. I was breaking. The cruelest moment came one Sunday dinner. We were gathered in the dining room, roast chicken steaming in the center of the table. Mom was in high spirits, sipping wine, cheeks flushed. Halfway through the meal, one of Dad's colleagues joined us, a family friend named Judge Harrison. He'd known us since we were kids, always treating Jenna and me equally. The conversation turned toward careers. Jenna bragged about her latest client pitch, painting herself as irreplaceable. Mom clapped, beaming. Then Judge Harrison turned to me, smiling kindly. And what about you, Elena? How's work? I straightened, hope fluttering in my chest. Finally, a chance to speak. But before I could open my mouth, Mom cut in. Oh, you know Elena, still the waitress girl. She's very good at refilling water glasses. The table chuckled. My fork clattered against my plate. My breath caught in my throat. Did she really just say that? I glanced at Judge Harrison. His smile had faltered. His brows furrowed like he wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. I wanted to defend myself. To scream that I wasn't just a waitress, that I was working double shifts to pay for grad school, that I was building something. But the words stuck in my throat, and then Jenna twisted the knife. It's okay, Mom. Not everyone is meant for big things. Someone's got to carry the trays. Laughter roared around the table, but not from Judge Harrison. His eyes locked on mine, and for the first time that night, I saw something that made my pulse quicken. Not pity. Not amusement. Recognition. Because what no one at that table realized was that Judge Harrison knew something my family didn't. And the way his jaw tightened, the way he set down his glass, told me he wasn't about to stay silent forever. The Sunday dinner that started with roast chicken ended like a courtroom drama. I never saw coming. Judge Harrison's eyes stayed fixed on me after Mom's cruel jab. His lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't say a word yet. He just lifted his glass and sipped, his silence louder than the laughter around me. And I sat there frozen. My hand shook so badly I set my fork down before it clattered again. Mom dabbed at her mouth with her napkin, sighing like she'd just shared a delightful joke. Come now, Elena, don't sulk. We love you, sweetheart, but you have to admit, you've always been more comfortable serving than leading? Serving. That word burned. Dad chuckled, nodding. It's not an insult, honey. It's reality. Everyone has a role to play. Jenna's the leader. You're the helper. It's just how it is, Jenna smirked, twirling her wine glass. Honestly, Mom, Dad's right. Elena's just steady, reliable, like the background music at a restaurant. You notice it when it's gone, but it's never the main act. The table roared. Heat flooded my face. My ears rang. For a moment, I thought I'd pass out from the sheer force of humiliation. But then Dad leaned forward, his voice booming across the table. You know what your problem is, Elena? You think too small. You'll never build a legacy clearing plates. You'll always be— He paused dramatically, his eyes sweeping the table. Our little waitress girl. The words landed like a hammer. The room went quiet. Even Jenna's smirk faltered for half a second, like she hadn't expected him to go that far. My chest tightened, my throat locked, but I forced myself to speak. Dad, why would you say that? He waved a dismissive hand. Don't be dramatic. It's the truth. You're 28 and still working shifts at a restaurant. Jenna's climbing the ladder, winning awards. You? He shrugged. You refill water. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't let them see me cry. Not here. Not like this. Judge Harrison finally set down his fork with a loud clink. The sound cut through the silence like a gavel. He looked directly at my father. His voice was low, steady. Richard. That's enough. The room froze. My father's smile faltered. Excuse me? The judge's eyes narrowed. Do you have any idea what your daughter actually does? Or are you too busy worshiping the one who flatters you? The table went dead quiet. My mother's fork hovered midair. Jenna's glass froze halfway to her lips. I stared at him, my breath caught in my chest. What did he mean? What did he know? Dad laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. Come on, Harrison. Don't tell me you're taking this personally. She's a waitress. We all know it. The judge leaned forward, his voice sharper now. She's not just a waitress. She's been working at Tony's, yes, but do you know why? Because she's funding herself through graduate school. Because she's been building a career while carrying more weight than either of you care to acknowledge. Gasps rippled around the table. Mom blinked rapidly. What are you talking about? The judge's gaze softened when he looked at me, then hardened again as it swung back to my parents. She's one of the brightest law clerks I've ever seen. Elena has been working under me for nearly a year. And let me tell you, Your so-called waitress girl is going to be a damn fine attorney. My heart slammed against my ribs. My secret, the one I'd kept quiet until I could prove myself, was now out in the open. The table erupted, but not in laughter this time. Mom's napkin slipped from her fingers. Dad's mouth opened and closed like he couldn't form words. Jenna stared at me, eyes wide, smirk wiped clean. And me? I sat frozen, my pulse roaring in my ears. The judge wasn't finished. "You should be ashamed," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the room. "Ashamed of how you've mocked her. Ashamed of how you've belittled the only one in this family who knows what it means to fight for her place." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Dad slammed his fist on the table, his face flushing red. "You don't come into my house and lecture me about my family." But the judge didn't flinch. "Then start treating your daughter like family. Because if you keep calling her useless, one day you'll wake up and realize you've lost the only one who actually cared to earn your respect." The words hung heavy in the air. I wanted to speak, to confirm, to stand tall, but my throat was tight, my hands trembling. The humiliation, the shock, the sudden rush of truth, it was too much. So I did the only thing I could. I pushed back my chair, my voice barely above a whisper. "Excuse me." I walked out of the dining room, the sound of silverware clinking and hushed whispers fading behind me. I thought leaving the table would give me space to breathe. But instead, I found myself standing alone in the dark hallway, tears finally spilling. And in that moment I realized this wasn't just about humiliation. This was war. The hallway was dim, lit only by a chandelier's faint glow spilling from the dining room. My breath came in sharp bursts like I'd sprinted a mile. I leaned against the wall, pressing a hand to my chest. But it did nothing to calm the storm inside me. "Waitress girl." The words echoed over and over, each repetition slicing deeper. I had spent years juggling trays and textbooks, nights that blurred into dawns, all because I believed, foolishly, that one day my family would finally look at me and see someone worth being proud of. Instead, they laughed. My hands shook so violently that I gripped the edge of the hallway table just to stay upright. The framed photos on it blurred through my tears. Jenna smiling at her college graduation, Jenna holding a trophy, Jenna with Mom and Dad beaming proudly at her side. I wasn't in any of them. Not one. Footsteps creaked behind me. I froze. "Elena?" It was Judge Harrison's voice, calm but firm. I swiped at my cheeks quickly, forcing a brittle smile as I turned. "I'm fine," he shook his head. "No, you're not." His gaze softened, lowering to meet mine. "Don't let their cruelty bury what you've built. I've seen students crumble under half the weight you carry, and you—" He paused, his jaw tightening. "You're one of the best clerks I've ever had." My throat burned. "Why would you say that in front of them?" "Because truth matters," he said simply. "And because you needed someone to say it when they refused to." I opened my mouth to reply, but a sound from the dining room cut through. The clinking of glasses, followed by Jenna's laughter. It rang out, sharp, triumphant. They were celebrating again. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just been stripped bare at their table. The judge glanced toward the sound, then back at me. "You don't need their approval, Elena. But you do need to decide what you're going to do with the anger I know is eating you alive." His words hit me harder than my father's insult. Because they were true. Anger was coiling inside me, tight and dangerous. And I had no idea where to put it. That night I didn't go back to the table. I grabbed my coat, whispered a shaky goodbye to Mom, she barely glanced up, and slipped out into the night. Denver air clung heavy against my skin, warm even after sundown. The cicadas screamed in the trees as I stumbled to my car, my vision blurred with tears. When I slid behind the wheel, the silence was deafening. No laughter, no applause, just me and the echo of his voice, useless waitress girl. I drove home on autopilot, my fingers gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. By the time I reached my apartment, the dam finally broke. I collapsed onto the couch, sobs ripping through me until my chest hurt. Hours passed. The city outside went quiet, but the storm inside me raged on. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Jenna lit up the screen. Jenna, sorry about earlier, sis. Don't take it so seriously. We were just joking. Love you. My hand trembled as I stared at the words. Joking. That was their favorite excuse. Cruelty wrapped in a bow of love. I hurled the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a sickening crack, the screen splintering. I didn't care. Curling up on the floor, I whispered into the darkness. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am nothing. The silence answered back, cold and merciless. The days that followed blurred. I went to work at the courthouse, pasted on a smile for Judge Harrison and the other clerks, but inside I was hollow. Case files are stacked on my desk. Motions need to be drafted. Deadlines loomed. I went through the motions, but my mind wasn't there. At night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the cracked phone screen, replaying every insult like a twisted highlight reel. You're not, Jenna. You're just a helper. You'll always be our little waitress, girl. Each word dug deeper until I couldn't tell if I was drowning in their voices or my own. Even my body betrayed me. Meals went untouched. Sleep was jagged, broken by nightmares of sitting at that table, frozen while they laughed. By the end of the week, I was a shell. Until something shifted. It was a Friday evening. I was sorting through files in the courthouse basement, trying to focus on anything but the echo in my head. My hands brushed against a case folder, its label smeared with ink. Property seizure, Carter and Associates. My breath caught. That was my father's firm. I pulled the folder closer, my hands trembling. Inside were records, cases filed against the company, whispers of shady deals, debts hidden behind layers of legal jargon. Nothing definitive, not yet, but enough to make my pulse race. My father wasn't untouchable. His empire wasn't flawless. For the first time in weeks, a flicker of something sparked in my chest. Not joy, not peace, determination. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, staring at the reflection of a woman with puffy eyes, hollow cheeks, and cracked lips. But as I stared, the flicker grew. I whispered to myself, my voice shaky but steadying with each word. I won't stay broken. I said it again, louder. I won't stay broken. The woman in the mirror straightened her shoulders, her eyes hardening, because if they wanted me to be nobody, I would show them exactly who I could be, and I wouldn't just prove it quietly. I would make sure the entire city heard. I placed the folder from the courthouse on my kitchen table, my fingers brushing over my father's name. For years, they'd buried me under humiliation. Now, I was about to start digging into them, and I wouldn't stop until I had everything I needed to strike back. The file sat on my kitchen table all weekend, its papers spread like puzzle pieces. I barely ate, barely slept. My pen scratched across sticky notes, arrows connecting debts to lawsuits, lawsuits to shell companies to my father's firm. By Sunday night, my apartment looked less like a home and more like a war room, I whispered to myself, tracing one line with my fingertip. You called me useless. Let's see how strong you are when the mask slips. But even I knew I couldn't do this alone. Monday morning, I asked Judge Harrison if I could meet with him privately. He raised an eyebrow but nodded, ushering me into his chambers. Elena, he said, gesturing for me to sit. You've been quieter lately, but I can tell your mind's working overtime. Talk to me, I hesitated. What I'm about to say, I need you to keep it between us. His gaze sharpened. Go on. I pulled a copy of the file from my bag, sliding it across his desk. This came across my desk last week. It's about my father's firm. There are irregularities. He studied the folder for a long moment, then leaned back, steepling his fingers. Irregularities are a polite word. This looks like fraud. My chest tightened. I need to know if it's enough. If I can build something from it. Build what, Elena? His voice was calm, but I could hear the warning in it. I swallowed hard. A case, a reckoning. He exhaled slowly, his eyes softening. You're not thinking like a clerk right now. You're thinking like someone who's been hurt. Revenge can burn everything around it, including you. I leaned forward, my voice steady. I'm not looking to burn everything, Judge, just the lies. Just the illusion that he's untouchable. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, finally, he closed the folder and slid it back to me. If you want this done, do it right, quietly, legally, and with allies you can trust. That night, I knew exactly who to call. Marcus, an old friend from college, is now a financial analyst. He owed me a favor. I'd once connected him with a client who saved his career. We met at a quiet bar downtown, the kind of place where no one cared who you were as long as you tipped well. He leaned across the table, scanning the papers I'd smuggled in a plain manila envelope. Jesus, Elena, do you know what this is? Yes, I whispered. Do you? He tapped the papers with one finger. Your father's leverage to the hilt. If this gets out, it won't just embarrass him. It'll destroy him. My hands shook slightly as I lifted my glass. That's the idea. Marcus studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. I'll dig deeper. But Elena, once you start this, there's no undoing it. I looked him straight in the eye. Good. The next step was Devin, my project manager at the courthouse. He'd seen me crumble after that dinner, seen me walk in hollow-eyed for weeks. When I told him the plan, his jaw tightened. They called you useless? After everything you've built? I nodded. He slammed his fist against the table. Then let's remind them exactly who you are. I smiled faintly. I'll need records. Property reports. Anything tied to the firm, quietly. He grinned. Say no more. If there's dirt, I'll find it. Piece by piece, my army began to form. Marcus worked the numbers. Devin pulled the records. Judge Harrison, though careful, hinted at the right legal paths to follow. And me? I became the architect of my own revenge, drawing blueprints not for buildings, but for justice. Every night I mapped it out. Timelines, connections, vulnerabilities. My walls were filled with diagrams, strings connecting names to companies, companies to lawsuits. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. My father's empire wasn't just cracked. It was crumbling, and all it needed was the right push, but information wasn't enough. I needed a stage. One evening, as I sat with Ethan on our tiny balcony, the city lights glittering below, the idea struck me. A gala, I whispered. He frowned. What? A fundraiser? A dinner? Something exclusive. I turned to him, eyes blazing. He humiliates me at his table? Fine, I'll build my own. And this time, he'll be the one on trial. Ethan's brows knitted, worry clouding his face. Elena, this is dangerous. You're talking about going to war with your own family. I clenched my fists. They declared war on me the second they called me nobody. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping. Then tell me what you need. I touched his hand gently. Just stand beside me. When it all comes crashing down, I need to know someone's still in my corner. His grip tightened. Always. The invitations were designed within a week. Thick cardstock, embossed lettering, elegant enough to rival any country club dinner. An evening of resilience, hosted by Elena Parker. I could already imagine the look on my mother's face when she opened it. The confusion, the disbelief, and the fear. By the time the first RSVPs rolled in, my chest buzzed with a new kind of energy. Not dread. Not humiliation. Power. I wasn't the girl crumbling under their laughter anymore. I was the woman setting the stage for their downfall. As I sealed the last envelope and slid it into the mailbox, I whispered to myself, "You wanted a waitress girl. What you're about to get is a reckoning." And for the first time, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The week after the invitations went out felt like walking a tightrope. Every step had to be measured. One wrong move and everything could collapse. Not just my plan, but the fragile validation I'd finally started to feel. First small win, the profile. I'd quietly given a draft to a food and culture columnist I'd befriended months earlier. The piece wasn't splashy. It was honest, about mentorship programs I'd started, projects I'd taken on, the community kitchens I'd helped fund. It presented me as a builder, not a punchline. The morning it ran, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from strangers thanking me, an investor asking to meet, and a school inviting me to speak at their career night. That little column did what my father's lectures never could. It made people see me. People like stories of the underdog, Marcus said, sipping black coffee across my kitchen table. He tapped the article open on his tablet. But they also like competence. You've got both, he grinned. Win-win. Devin brought the second win. He'd been rifling through property records and vendor contracts for days, quiet as a ghost. One afternoon, he slid into my office with a stack of photocopies and a stupid, satisfied smile. You were right, he said. Vendors are asking for upfront payments now, and one of his regular suppliers just pulled a pending favor. They're getting nervous. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was small, immediate, but it meant my whisper had become a tremor. At the restaurant preview, my soft launch for a handful of local influencers and journalists, everything had to be tight. Marcus and the kitchen crew moved like a machine, each played a test. I'd choreographed the night, an intimate tasting, a short talk about resilience, a quiet nudge to the right ears. Guests arrived, murmurs of curiosity rippling through the rooms. I greeted them, felt the old nerves, but walked steadily, because I'd practiced this new posture. Calm, owned, dangerous only when necessary. During dessert, an editor I respected pulled me aside. That piece you did? Good. There's chatter already. People are curious. She tapped her phone. If you want, I can line up a longer feature for next month. But be careful. Your father's camp is already pushing a narrative about family disputes. I smiled, measured. We'll stick to facts, I said. No mudslinging. 2 hours later, a vendor I'd never expected to back me called. Elena, heard about your event. I want in. If you need supplies for the gala, I'll give you priority. He paused. And, if you ever need a contact for a supplier who's been questionable with your father, I can help. That call felt like warm sunlight after a long winter. Small connections, slowly knitting into a net. But victories have a way of rattling those perched at the top. A few days after the preview, I started seeing subtle signs of panic. My father's PR firm sent out a terse statement, leaked, anonymous, quick to journalists. Reports of family disputes cloud the motives behind Parker's campaign. It was designed to shift the conversation from wrongdoing to personal vendetta. Devin found other tremors. A city contractor who'd previously whispered praise for my father suddenly distancing themselves, polite but cold. We're reviewing our exposure, they said. Translation: keep distance. Still, the tremors hurt less than the taste of progress tasted sweet. Then came a text that made my stomach drop. From an unknown number. You're poking a hornet's nest. Careful what you unleash. No name. No number trace. A threat thinly veiled as advice. My hands went cold. I showed it to Ethan. He read it, jaw hardening. Ignore it, he said immediately. They're trying to intimidate you. But the lawyer in me, the cautious part Judge Harrison warned about, knew better. Threats without provenance are a signal. They meant someone had resources and an appetite for escalation. I brought it to Ms. Alvarez the next morning. She didn't look surprised. Welcome to the moment you forced, she said. He's rattled. Men like your father don't like losing control. They hire people to control narratives and sometimes to dig dirt. Dirt like what? I asked. Anything that can be used to discredit you, your past, your choices, even your personal life. Or worse, investigators who want to make your life uncomfortable until you back down. The word investigator landed like a stone. Marcus doubled down on his research. I've been pulling more records. He's reaching out to crisis firms. He's not just PRing. He's prepping legal firepower. Devin brought a stack of emails with redacted names. They've contacted some people we know, he said. Not threats yet, just queries. Is Elena stable? Do you know about her finances? It's basic reputation warfare. My pulse spiked. It would have been easy to panic, to fold, to retreat into anonymity again and let the old labels stick. Instead, something steadied inside me. The wins, small as they were, hadn't just been about public praise. They'd built a scaffold of goodwill, of allies who could counter false narratives. "We prepare," I told Marcus, Devon, and Ms. Alvarez at a late-night meeting. "We document everything. We keep it legal. And we keep the story focused on facts, on the evidence we already have." Ms. Alvarez nodded. "We'll compile everything. If they escalate to slander or defamation, we'll be ready." But being ready and being safe are different things. A week before the gala, I walked into the kitchen and found a courier waiting with a plain envelope addressed in my mother's handwriting. Inside, a photograph. Me, years earlier, at a charity event with a man I'd once briefly dated in college. Nothing scandalous. Just a photo. No note. My body went cold. Someone was assembling pieces. Maybe fishing. Maybe trying to catch me off guard. I held the photo up to the light, then put it into the folder beside the other papers. I wrote a note for Marcus. Keep eyes open. No surprises. That night, as I lay awake, I realized something that both thrilled and terrified me. We'd scored small wins that wobbled his world. But that also meant we'd pulled his attention onto me. And when a man who has everything to lose turns his attention into a weapon, the smallest triumph can become a dangerous trigger. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, my war room glowed with maps, lists, and whispered plans. I closed my eyes, whispering into the dark. We've got this far. Then my phone buzzed. A new message, this time with a name I knew. "We need to talk. Tonight." "Richard." My chest tightened. The man who'd mocked me was asking, no, commanding an audience. I stared at the screen and felt the air shift, because a meeting with him now wouldn't be a conversation. It would be a move, and moves have consequences. The night of the gala wasn't just another dinner party. It was the stage I had built with my own hands, the place where years of mockery would finally meet their reckoning. My restaurant gleamed under golden chandeliers. Tables dressed in ivory cloth glistened with crystal glasses. A string quartet played softly in the corner, their notes trembling like the anticipation running through my veins. Every detail was deliberate: the roses, the lighting, the curated guest list. It was a trial disguised as a celebration. By 8 o'clock, the room buzzed with chatter. Local officials, investors, journalists, even a city councilwoman, they all came. Some out of curiosity, others out of loyalty, a few out of hunger for scandal. And then, my family arrived. My father walked in first, navy suit pressed to perfection, jaw tight but smile practiced. My mother trailed behind, her pearl necklace gleaming, eyes darting nervously around the room. And Jenna, sequined gown, glass of champagne already in her hand, smirked like she owned the place. The crowd shifted. Whispers slithered across the tables. "That's Richard Parker. What's he doing here?" The same man who once commanded respect now drew suspicion, like a king walking into a court where his crown was in question. I greeted them at the entrance, my gown a sleek satin that caught the light like armor. My voice was calm even. "Welcome. I'm glad you could make it." My father's lips curled faintly. "Wouldn't miss it. Curious to see what kind of circus you've put together." I held his gaze. "It's no circus, Dad. Tonight is history." Dinner unfolded in waves of perfection. Lobster bisque, filet mignon, and handmade truffle risotto. Guests murmured their delight. Glasses clinked. Laughter rippled. But not at me this time. The applause, the compliments, the spotlight, all of it bent toward me. And with every toast, my father's smile thinned. At one point, Jenna leaned close, her voice dripping with venom. "Lovely food, Elena. Did you cook it yourself? Or are you just playing hostess?" I met her gaze, calm, unshaken. "Neither. I built the space where professionals thrive. That's the difference between us, Jenna. I don't need to borrow anyone else's shine." Her smirk cracked. Just a little. And it was delicious, but the true blow was still to come. When the last plates were cleared, Marcus tapped his glass. The sharp ring silenced the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced smoothly, "our host would like to share a few words." All eyes turned to me. My pulse thundered, but my voice was steady, practiced, sharpened by every humiliation I'd endured. "Thank you for being here," I began, letting my gaze sweep across the room. "Tonight isn't just about celebration. It's about resilience. For years I was told I was nothing, that I was just a waitress girl, that I'd never measure up." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Some leaned forward, intrigued. Others glanced at my family. My father's jaw clenched, beads of sweat forming at his temple. "But useless daughters don't build thriving businesses," I continued, my voice stronger now. "Useless daughters don't create jobs, don't host nights like this. And useless daughters certainly don't uncover truths powerful men try desperately to hide." Gasps scattered across the tables. I nodded to Ms. Alvarez, who rose gracefully, a leather folder in her hands. She carried it to the head table where my father sat and laid it before him with a loud, deliberate thud. "This," I said clearly, "is documented proof of financial mismanagement, falsified filings, and reckless debts. The empire behind Richard Parker is nothing but smoke and mirrors. And tonight the smoke clears." Whispers exploded like sparks. Journalists scribbled furiously, phones lit up under the tables, and cameras discreetly clicked. My father grabbed the folder, flipping pages with frantic hands. "This is fabricated," he barked, his voice cracking. "She's staging this. My daughter is staging this." But Ms. Alvarez's voice sliced through his denial, sharp and precise. "Every page has been verified. Copies are already with the proper authorities." The room erupted. Guests leaned across tables, whispering, eyes darting between me and him. Investors shifted in their seats, discomfort written all over their faces. A city councilwoman murmured, "Unbelievable," under her breath. Jenna slammed her glass down, champagne spilling across the table. "You're insane, Elena. You humiliate your own family for attention?" I turned toward her, my voice calm but cutting like steel. "No, Jenna, I exposed the truth. If the truth humiliates you, that's not my fault. That's yours." For the first time, the laughter in the room wasn't aimed at me. It rippled around my sister instead. My father stood suddenly, his fists trembling at his sides, his face red with rage. "This isn't over!" he roared, his voice echoing off the chandeliers. "You think one night changes everything? You'll regret this, Elena." The crowd gasped. Chairs scraped against the floor as guests leaned back, stunned by the spectacle. I stepped forward, my heels sharp against the marble, my voice cold but steady. "No, Dad, this is just the beginning." And then, the moment I'll never forget, the entire room rose to its feet. Applause thundered through the air, crashing over his roar, drowning his fury. Cameras flashed, hands clapped, voices cheered. For years they'd laughed at me. Now they stood for me. I locked eyes with him one last time. His glare cut deep, lips curling around a whisper only I could read. "You've made powerful enemies tonight. And powerful enemies don't forgive." But the applause swallowed his words whole. The spotlight shifted, once and for all. I stood tall, my chest rising, my pulse pounding. This was the night everything changed. The night the waitress girl disappeared, and the woman they had underestimated took the throne. Because when you drag a king off his throne in front of his court, you don't just leave him defeated. You leave him desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. The morning after the gala, sunlight streamed through my curtains, warm and golden, but inside me it felt like the air was charged with static. My phone buzzed nonstop on the nightstand. Notifications stacked faster than I could swipe them away. Headlines blared across every screen. "Waitress Girl no more. Elena Parker exposes father's empire." From shadows to spotlight, daughter brings down Richard Parker. My name was everywhere. My face, too. The video of my speech had gone viral overnight. Millions of views, shares, and comments. Strangers I'd never met were calling me brave, powerful, and an inspiration. But all I could think of was the look on my father's face. The moment his mask cracked, the fury in his eyes, the whispered warning only I had seen. I sat at the edge of my bed, phone buzzing in my hand, and for a second I felt hollow. I had expected triumph, relief, maybe even joy. Instead, there was just a strange quiet inside me, like standing in the middle of a battlefield after the smoke clears. By noon, the fallout began to unfold. Ms. Alvarez called first. Her tone was brisk, efficient, but I could hear the satisfaction in her words. "Elena, it's happening faster than we anticipated. Creditors are circling his company. Board members are jumping ship. Half his partners have already pulled their support. He's unraveling." I pressed a hand to my forehead, whispering, "Already?" "Yes," she said. "Your father built his empire on shaky ground. You didn't destroy it, Elena. You just pulled back the curtain. The rest, it was always waiting to collapse." Her words should have felt comforting. Instead, they sat heavily in my chest. That afternoon, Marcus stopped by my office with the morning paper. The front page screamed in bold, "The Fall of Richard Parker." Beneath the headline was a photo of my father, shoulders hunched, face pale, as cameras flashed while he exited his office. No chauffeur, no confident stride, just a man stripped bare. "Thought you'd want to see this," Marcus said quietly, setting the paper on my desk. I stared at it for a long moment. The sight should have filled me with triumph, but instead a strange ache twisted in my chest. Because this wasn't just about victory. It was about family. And my family was burning. Then came the call I hadn't expected. Jenna. Her voice, usually so sharp and smug, trembled through the line. "Elena, everything's collapsing. Dad's furious. Mom won't stop crying. Reporters are camped outside the house. People keep calling me, asking questions I can't answer." I stayed silent, letting her words hang heavy in the air. She whispered, voice cracking, "I'm humiliated. I don't know what to do." 1,000 memories flashed through me. Her laughter as Dad mocked me. Her smirk when she unwrapped a diamond bracelet while I got a clearance cookbook. The way she twirled Tesla keys in her fingers while I struggled to pay rent. I finally spoke, my voice steady, cold. "Do you remember what you called me at dinner? Waitress Girl, once." Then, a small, shaky voice. "I'm sorry. The apology I had waited years for. But instead of sweetness, it felt bitter. Because it wasn't born of remorse. It was born of desperation. You chose your side that night," I said firmly. "And now you get to live with it." Her quiet sobs filled the line before it went dead. Later that evening, a courier arrived at my restaurant. He carried a letter, thick cream paper, my father's handwriting slashed across it in angry strokes. "Elena," it read, "you think you've won. But applause fades. Knives don't. You've humiliated me, but this story isn't finished." I read it twice. My hands trembled as I passed it to Ethan. His jaw tightened as he scanned the words. "He's bluffing," he muttered. "He's lashing out because he's desperate." But lying awake that night, staring at the ceiling, I replayed the words in my head. Knives don't fade. It wasn't just anger. It was a promise days blurred into weeks. Reports surfaced of my parents selling assets. The beach house, the luxury cars, even Mom's jewelry. Whispers of bankruptcy clung to their name like smoke. But through it all, my mother never called. Not once. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. And her silence was its own betrayal. Devin dropped a stack of documents on my desk one afternoon, his face grim. "It's official. The firm is under investigation. Fraud, embezzlement, falsified filings. Your father's empire is crumbling faster than anyone expected." I traced my fingers over the ink, the proof of everything I had uncovered, everything I had fought for. But instead of joy, I felt something heavier, because revenge doesn't heal the wounds of a little girl begging her mother for love. It doesn't erase the nights I cried alone after family dinners. It doesn't replace the birthdays forgotten, the achievements dismissed. It just proves I was right, that they would never see me as enough. That evening, Ethan and I sat on our balcony, the city lights twinkling below us. He studied me quietly, then asked softly, "You don't look happy." "Why?" I whispered. "I thought this would feel like victory." "But it feels like ashes. He took my hand, squeezed it gently. Because you're not like them, Elena. They thrive on humiliation. You wanted closure, and maybe you're realizing closure doesn't come from watching someone else fall. It comes from deciding what comes next. His words lingered in the cool night air, heavier than the silence that followed. And as I gazed out at the glittering skyline, I realized something. The war wasn't just with my family anymore. It was inside me, because revenge had given me power. But only I could decide whether it would chain me to the past, or finally set me free. I had brought them down, but the real question remained. Could I rise without carrying their ashes with me? Weeks passed, and slowly the noise began to quiet. Reporters who once called me every hour now turned their attention to the next scandal. Headlines shifted. The storm that had consumed my family name was fading into the background of the city's endless news cycle. For the first time in months, the silence didn't feel like rejection. It felt like peace. One evening, I stood in the restaurant I had poured my soul into, the restaurant they used to mock me for working in. Only now, it wasn't just a workplace. It was mine. The chandeliers sparkled above polished tables. Laughter and conversation filled the air, and the staff I had built from scratch moved with confidence and pride. This wasn't a stepping stone anymore. It was a legacy. I raised a glass to my team, my voice carrying across the room. To resilience, I said, my throat tightening with emotion. To everyone who's ever been underestimated. To those who've been called nobody or useless. May you rise so high that those words turn to whispers, and then fade away. Applause filled the room. But this time, it wasn't their approval I craved. It was my own. Later that week, Jenna came to see me. She stood at my door, her makeup smeared, her voice trembling. Elena, I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know I regret everything. The laughter, the words, the way I treated you. I was wrong. I studied her carefully. The little sister who had once smirked over diamond bracelets while I unwrapped cookbooks now stood before me, stripped of pride. For a moment, the old ache returned, the yearning for closeness, for family. But it didn't hurt the way it used to. I don't hate you, Jenna, I said softly. But forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened. It's about deciding what defines me. And I won't let your cruelty define me anymore. Her eyes welled with tears. She nodded silently, then turned and left. I didn't stop her. Some goodbyes are necessary. As for my father, I never saw him again. His empire dissolved piece by piece. His name, once spoken with respect, became a cautionary tale. He lived like a ghost in the same city where he had once ruled. And the strangest part? I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free, because revenge wasn't the ending. Freedom was. One night, Ethan and I sat on the balcony. The city stretched out like a field of stars below us. He studied me for a long moment, then asked quietly, "Do you feel it now? That sense you've been chasing?" I smiled, a smile that felt like it came from somewhere deeper than I'd ever reached before. Yes, for the first time, I'm not fighting to prove myself, I just am. The cool air brushed my skin, and for once, I didn't feel like the girl begging for approval at a family dinner. I felt like the woman who had built her own table, her own future, her own voice. I thought back to the little girl who once blew out candles on a store-bought cupcake while her sister rode in a limo for her birthday. I thought about the countless nights I worked double shifts, serving strangers while my family sneered. And I thought about the moment I finally stood tall, no longer their Waitress Girl, but Elena Parker, daughter, woman, leader. And in that moment, I knew. The real victory wasn't that I had destroyed their illusion. It was that I had stopped needing their approval to feel whole. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Would you forgive betrayal like this, or would you walk away forever? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts.